All right. So Tim stole my "put your hands up if" line because I was going to ask how many skeptics we have here, and it's not uncommon for a lot of those, right? So this is brand new technology, and any resistance to that or desire to not understand it, right? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I don't need to deal with this. I'm going to try and talk to you about some of that in terms of the ethics and the pitfalls that we might find using this technology. So a little bit about me. Been an attorney for 15, 16, possibly 17 years now. But, just to tell you a little bit about myself, I think when I learned my ABCs, my father had me sorting files in his law firm by alphabetizing. And my grandfather was an attorney as well. So my dad grew up in that, and I grew up in that, swearing I'd never become an attorney. Nope, not happening. We'll never do it. Don't want to wear a suit. Don't want to shave. Forget this. And I saw the toll it took on my dad and on my grandfather. You know what I mean? 9, 10, 11 o'clock p.m. phone calls, clients who don't recognize the work you're putting in, whatever it may be. So I was against it for a long time, but I did come around to it. And I came around to it at a time where the practice was changing with technology, right? And so, that's kind of the frame that I've seen. I've seen the secretary pools. I saw typewriters. I saw, them move to word processing. Computers come along. I saw file cabinets go to servers. Servers go to the cloud. Email, right? I used to walk to the post office with my dad when I went to work with him, and go there and get a lollipop or whatever from the post office guy. And then it was email, then it was secure email. So these changes, I've been lucky enough to see them, even if I wasn't practicing attorney that whole time. So I've been lucky enough to see them, and I've been lucky enough to kind of experience those monumental shifts. And there's even more if you think about marketing and how we're running our businesses too. So that's kind of the angle I'm coming at it from. And I'm grateful to have you guys here. I'm very grateful to echo Tim for the Southern hospitality in the Boston area. It's usually a middle finger extended and laying on the horn. So it's very different for me. I'm like fish out of the water. And I'm grateful that I don't have to follow these two and I get to go first, because I think you're going to really enjoy their presentation more than ethics and guidance in that front. I don't know if you guys have seen the new Bob Dylan biopic, A Complete Unknown. And that's kind of what AI is to us too. But he's famous for plugging in at the Newport Folk Festival and kind of changing the game. And that's a metaphor that I'm thinking about here, because that's what we're doing. We're plugging into a new technology, and we're recognizing that whether we like it or not, the times are changing. The question is really shifting from why adopt to when. And so these are kind of the things that are driving the reason why you're here, and the reason why AI is kind of at the forefront of what we're talking about. The clients are looking for more confidence in the billing amount that you're giving them, the hours you think you're going to put in there. They're looking for faster turnaround. They're looking for better gauge on how much this is going to cost them. We're watching other firms adopt this and potentially move into a better competitive space than we are. And we're looking at the way that the future of law is going right now. So I think 60% of attorneys are younger. I'd say under 45. And we're seeing a baby boomer shift. We're also seeing kind of a gap around COVID, right? So COVID kind of pushed some folks out of the business. And post-COVID, law school applications skyrocketed. I mean, after that Great Recession, they had gone really low. So they're coming up. And so what happens with more legal graduates? You have more tech-savvy associates coming in. They have a desire to change the practice. And so, all of these factors are at work to kind of drive us to say, all right, I've got to look at this and I've got to figure out if we're adopting this and what it looks like. But we're here to also talk about the barriers here, right? And I'll obviously go into the data privacy and the ethical concerns, but some of us, I mentioned before, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. That's the resistance to change. How expensive is this stuff? How much of a headache is it going to be to implement? And how much training we have to go through, right? All of these are headaches that we have to look at when we're adopting a new software. But, up in Boston, we get a lot of snow. My analogy was always like, I looked at 4 or 5 inches of snow in my long, hilly driveway. My kid needed to go to his basketball game, and I could shovel it. My back would hurt, but I get it done and we could get out the door. Or I could change the spark plugs in the snowblower, which is a pain in the butt. But if I did that, I'm going to blow through that. And that's the analogy I want to draw for you guys, is that with a little bit of time up front, you're going to get a machine that does the work for you without breaking your back. Okay. So I think my father would have said, don't be a meatball. That's a line he told me growing up. And that's the same approach that I take with ethics. I take with professional responsibility. I would take with AI. If you think there's an issue there, let's slow down and think it through. If you think that there's a pitfall, what do we know already that we can apply to this? And that's what the ABA, and I'll go over what the Mississippi Bar put out there too, but that's essentially the thrust of all of this stuff, is remember your rules of professional responsibility, remember the guidelines that you learned and that you've applied to your profession as you're growing up, as you're maturing as an attorney, and then be responsible, right? Be smart about this. Let's make sure if we're going to get into this that we learn what it's about, how it works, how to use it safely. And we always make sure that we have our supervision and our judgment first, right? So no matter what comes out, we'll go over some of the issues that have already happened, I'm sure people have heard about. But what we want to do is just approach this with a rational mind on the rules of responsibility that we already know. And it all applies to AI, same way it applied to email, same way it applied to servers, same way it applied to all the other technologies that we're talking about. So Mississippi Bar Ethics Committee late last year came out with their opinion, read through that, pulled out some of the key parts, but it's the same rules that we know. It's the same rules that we've already functioned under for as long as any of us have been practicing law before. It's that we have to make sure that we're keeping client confidentiality at a high level. We have to make sure we're talking to the client, making sure we're getting their consent, their informed consent. We have to supervise it like we would an associate, like we would a paralegal, like we would a legal assistant, whatever it may be. And we've got to communicate, and we've got to make sure our billing is accurate to the time and the work that we're doing. If I use AI to do something in 15 minutes, I shouldn't be charging for an hour. So then the ABA came out with this a little bit earlier, July of last year. Same idea. It's this don't be a meatball approach. It's make sure that if you're going to use this, you fully consider the implications, the ethical obligations. You do so responsibly, and you do so with vigilance, right? So that's the thing that we have to remember is every time we use these tools, we're thinking about how does this affect the client? How does this affect my practice? Because if we use it wrong, as we'll talk about a couple of cases that are prevalent, it's a bad look for you. There could be sanctions. It's a bad look for your poor client. And we want to make sure that we avoid those situations. So I'll run through these rules. It's not the most exciting part of what we're going to do. It's good to learn this stuff. But you'll notice themes that go through this. And the themes are those last two slides I just showed you. It's that we've got to be good at it, we've got to understand it, and we've got to use it ethically. We've got to be responsible for the way we're using it, and to make sure that we don't put our clients at risk, their confidentiality, their data, their privacy, whatever it may be. So competence is part of what we're doing here today, right? We're going to learn a lot about Andrew's going to show you some great AI stuff. Tim's going to talk to you a lot. So we need to know how this stuff works. And I'm not going to be the one who lectures you guys about large language models or agentic frameworks and all this other stuff, because I'm not, right? I'd be kind of making it up as I went. But the reality is this technology changes weekly. Like the advances in it are absolutely insane. And that's a lot to keep up with. So if we don't have the structure in our law firms to have a policy, to be reading, to get a newsletter, or whatever it may be, if we're not being served that information, we're gonna back ourselves in a corner. We're not using it the correct way, and we could obviously expose ourselves and our clients. So there's a competence level here. We need to stay updated. We need to find a source of information that helps us navigate this, just like we would with anything else. I think this is a big one, probably worth pausing for a moment. There are no rules. So all of this is being applied to a brand new technology that I already talked about changing very rapidly. And there's no real rules around what to do. My recommendation is that we talk to the clients. I use AI for it. I use this model, or I use this vendor, and I don't enter in any personal information, or if I do, it's secured. This is how it's secured. It's a pretty easy conversation. It could be a paragraph in an engagement letter. It could be a whole separate letter, whatever you want to do. I can even follow up with this and send you some of the work that we've done. But the client really should be aware, because it's going to frame how they interact with you as an attorney and how they interact with your law firm. It's going to change their expectations. They may already have different expectations coming in. And you want to make sure that that's very clear. So transparency, and then you tell them the truth that a machine cannot replace the judgment of an attorney, all right? No matter how fast and how great it can draft a document, or it can do legal research or compare contracts, there's an element of our work and our training that has to be there. And the oversight is a big part of it. We do it in our company. I won't talk too much about it, but we have a human that reviews everything before it goes out.